All right, so the next thing we're going to talk about is the next section of the paper. Now, you only have right now, you only have to hand in up to the lit review, up to the end of the lit review. But we're going to keep discussing the different sections. So if you want to work on them, you know, you can. You don't have to wait until after you hand in the lit review to continue working on this for the final paper. So we're going to talk about this next section. So you're going to work up till here, the end of the lit review, and the next section is called definition. And this should be no more than a page. It can be half a page. That's fine. So I'd say between half a page and a page in your final paper. And, it's basically to define things that the average professional counselor won't be familiar with. So you're not defining general counseling terms or theories. Like if you use CBT, you're not defining CBT, nothing like that. But let's say you're talking about a very specific population, um, like codependency. Okay. So you might want to give a little bit of info about what codependency is. Um, if you're dealing with specific terminology that the average counselor would not have learned in their master's degree. So it's beyond the foundational knowledge that a counselor would learn. It's about really specific terms or or maybe new terms. So if maybe a counselor graduated 5 years ago, maybe there's a brand new term out that they might not have gotten when they were in school. So it's really about defining things that the average counselor may not be familiar with. So let's look at an example. And I always use this paper as an example, and you can too. So if we go through, and this paper's on PTSD and vets. So here's the definition. So for instance, so Kayla was a student, and in our theories class, we didn't go over acceptance and commitment therapy, ACT. It's a great therapy. I like it, but we can only hit so many theories in our theories class. So she included a little bit. Same with cognitive processing therapy. DBT, we didn't go over that in class, but I would say most people do know about that. She didn't need to add person-centered. PTSD, I think she would have hit that in another place, probably in the history of the problem. But virtual reality exposure therapy, that was pretty new when she wrote the paper. And notice it's only a couple sentences. It's not like paragraphs. She's not cutting or pasting long quotes. It's really just putting things in her own words. This is what the term is, and then 1 to 2 sentences defining that term. So it's really not a huge deal. So, half page to a page, things that the average counselor might not be familiar with, maybe new terms, maybe very topic specific terms or issue specific terms, things like that. So you only have to have 2 to 5. It doesn't have to be a lot of definitions. Um, and then this part, the next part is research questions. And if you noticed, that's not really on the outline. And the reason it's not on this outline is because I included the research questions in the lit review. Okay. So a lot of like if you were writing a dissertation or, going to publish this or something like that, you might want to include research questions in its own section. But the research questions are really asked here in the lit review. And either way is fine. You do have to include them in the lit review. You can include them in their own section, but you don't have to. As long as they're in the lit review, you're good to go. If you want to include them in their own section as well, you can relist them there if you want to. I didn't want you to see that section. You were using that paper as an example and be confused by it. So after that, we're getting into the model. And we're all the way up to almost the end of your paper. And the only 2 sections left are you're going to introduce your model and then propose a study. And as we go through every chapter that's left in the book, it goes through how do you do population and sample. And so we'll do it together. And what's your methodology? And we'll do that together. So there's a chapter on this. There's a chapter on this. We'll talk about measurements. We'll talk about reliability, validity, and limitations. So I'll walk you through each part of that proposed study. And honestly, each part is only a short paragraph. These are not pages long each. Population and sample, 1 paragraph. Methodology, type of study, procedure, measurements, all that is maybe 1 to 2 paragraphs. So we're talking about the proposed study is about a page. Can be more, minimum a page, The model. This, I think, I've said it's the most creative part. It's the part that interests me. This is when you get to be creative and create something new and get excited about it because this is how you're going to help that population that you're interested in working with. So to me, this is really the neat part of your paper, and the creative part, and so we'll talk more about that in a future class. And that takes us, throughout the rest of the semester. But any questions about definitions for your paper? They're pretty straightforward. They're pretty simple. You should have at least 2 just to have that section in your paper. So, think about that as you're reading your articles and, think, oh, well, I didn't really know what that term was. Well, if you didn't know what it was, that might be a good thing to define, All right. So we are moving along here. I'm just going to stop recording at each section so I can put this on D2L under topics.